All right. So this presentation we're doing today is I graduated, now what? And this will go over, the next steps after you've completed your pathway and what you should do next as far as getting that job, working on additional projects, kind of how to tackle those, and really how to position yourself into landing that first job, because that's what we're all here for, is to make that big tech upgrade, get in the field. So in no particular order tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about all the things to make this plan successful. So we'll cover networking, using LinkedIn, applying for jobs, checking your current workspace, building projects ideas, and then keeping motivated, because that is definitely difficult throughout the process. Want to put this slide up here. We'll leave it up for the duration of the presentation. This is everybody to reach out to. So we've got David and myself on the careers team. We're both technical project managers. So once you graduate, if you're interested, you could reach out to us. We work with folks to partner with nonprofits to build additional projects. And also, if we don't have any lined up, we'll have you all build some additional projects yourself. And we'll guide you through it, set some milestones, and have you building some really great stuff. Then we got Shannon Sheehy. I think she's here. She's our manager. If you're ever confused or don't know who to reach out to, you can reach out to any of us or her, and she'll direct you where to go, or we will. August or Jenny, you've probably been in contact with them. They're the career coaches. They're getting your resumes and things like that. And then we've got Allie Rippey and then Tracy Spencer. Both of those are the employer specialists or employer relationship specialists. So they have all those connections with the employers who are looking for jobs. So all the jobs they post, they've talked to somebody, vetted them. If they say reach out to us when you apply, definitely reach out, because then they can fast track you to the hiring manager so you make it through the application tracking system and all that good stuff. So when we say that, definitely do that. I will hit on my part first, and then if David's not back, I'll cover his end of it. So what I want to cover is working on projects. That is a big thing that we need to do. Once we graduate, we make that one capstone project. That's not our stopping point. You're likely not going to get hired just having that one project unless it really just knocks somebody's socks off. You went above and beyond. They really want to see, your continued growth and learning, your interest in the projects and in the field. So we'll talk about working on those projects and where to get started on that. So one of the easiest things to do in that space is to keep working in GitHub. And by that, I mean more than just committing your code. Start working on making branches, making pull requests. Once you make a branch, you can push it up to your own repo and do a pull request. You're going to get cool little badges and things for that, but that's how it all works in the real world. When you're working for a job, you're never working on the main branch. So when you're doing these things, you're showing the employers that you know how they work, and it just looks good for you. And then it makes it less of a burden whenever you get that new job. You're not having to learn all these additional GitHub steps and their process and their tech stack, so on and so forth. Beyond that, there's GitHub Actions. Those are tests that you can build yourself that run on GitHub. So when you push your projects up, it'll do things like running linting to see that you've linted your code correctly, or you can do unit tests, a variety of things like that. So pretty easy to do. There's a lot of tutorials online for that. Then utilizing things like GitHub projects, you can set like Trello boards on GitHub. So when they look at your projects, they can look at your GitHub projects as well and see how you broke down that project, the pieces that you built it in, and where you moved everything, and how you went about tackling those problems. So even though it might be just you working on the project, you're still working on it like it's an organizational project. Beyond GitHub, I can't recommend this more strongly. I like to call them micro projects. So when you're on LinkedIn and you're looking at this job post and you see those skills that you're like, I don't know what that is, or I don't have that, that's where we do a little micro project. So maybe they mention a package that you're not familiar with, or a framework, a database platform that you've never worked with, Docker, AWS, something like that. Those are great opportunities then to take and build a little micro project. We're not looking for anything huge or elaborate. maybe they mentioned Polars, which is a Python package that's like pandas. You might work that, import some data, do some kind of aggregation real quick, make a graph, just like 3 little things, but just getting yourself familiar with it, see what that is. And that way, if you apply, they look at your GitHub, they see that you're learning those things. Same with frameworks. You can convert a small little HTML project into a framework just to start getting the hang of that. Same with the databases and all that stuff. So you really can't beat that. That's one of the best things you can do. In those micro projects, I can't stress enough CRUD. So what that is create, read, update, and delete. That's working with data. So anytime that we're working with data, we're either creating new data, reading it, updating it, deleting it. That's what this job is ultimately. Is we're all dealing with data. We're, if you're on the web dev front, you're displaying it on a website somewhere. As data folks, we're crunching data, delivering results. C# folks, you're dealing with data. That's all we do. We're dealing with data. So if you're doing all that with those mini projects, that's showing that you know how to use those little skills to the full advantage of the company. And then when you're doing that stuff, go beyond just your basic updates and things. If you can do some kind of aggregating, display it in a pleasing manner, make some tables, graphs, inject it into some forms, what have you, all that just really is showing that you're taking and putting those micro skills into practice. Then after you learn a couple of those skills, 2 or 3 of them, I like to always build a mini project off of them. So you took that initial learning and then you're combining 2 or 3 of those in a comprehensive way that shows that you can do beyond that little learning and put them into another little project that shows you how to use them all together. That's creating consistency, showing a learning process, and it demonstrates your ability to learn. So definitely can't, beat that. And then we also talk about this quite a bit, is contributing to open source. So if you can find any kind of open source software that you're interested in, always looking to contribute to that. That helps out a ton. It will be a little overwhelming and complex because you're going to see code written in ways that you've never done before, just because these production-worthy packages and things more than likely are written by senior devs, but that doesn't mean you can't help. There's a lot of work in them that needs to be done. So if you look through it, you might be able to just document things a little better. Maybe you can do some cleanup and things like that they just didn't have time to do. That's great ways to get your contributions done. And then that also helps you learn how you need to structure your code in a professional environment, because you can only learn so much on your own without seeing actual production code. So that's always a really good way to start analyzing and picking that thing apart and being like, oh, they're repping their functions like this. They put them in classes here. They separate files this way. They start to think a little bit differently than you are. So that's really cool. We're not doing any slide changes. We're just talking here. Then there's also team projects. This is really important. I lost out to a job on this one time because I was new to developing, and the supervisor really just wanted to see how it would work with the team, and I hadn't done any collaborations with anybody at that point. So collaborating with your friends or fellow students to build a project together that's showing that you know how to communicate and do things together with the team. So definitely link up with some people. Y'all can make simple projects together. Doesn't have to be anything fancy, but it's always nice to see multiple people committing to the same repo and working together in unison to then accomplish a goal. And then that's utilizing all those GitHub skills and everything else that we've covered there. All right. So I'll cover some of David's points here. So aside from these projects, networking is one of the most important things that we can do as well. In this space, I'm sure a lot of you have been applying to jobs, and you've seen, AI taking over, everything like that. There's folks that I've known that have lost jobs, and with 8 hours of losing their job, they've gotten a new job just through leveraging their network. Knowing other programmers, they've worked with them, they've done projects, they've mentored with them here at CodeU, things like that. Whenever these things happen, you're really leaning on your network. And the bigger that network is coming to things like this, the better. Forget your name. Anna Maria, you were mentioning thank you to Thomas for sharing the event, like stuff like that. That's awesome. You're going to remember that. Thomas might remember that. Like, you're starting to build these bonds. And, after this presentation, you talk a little bit, might build a project together, something like that. And then, Thomas's job's hiring, and he's like, oh, yeah, I've worked with Anna Maria. She's awesome. Let's get her in here. They're going to pick somebody over this random applicant because you've done work with them, how they perform. So building that network is super strong. And in that, leveraging LinkedIn, you meet these people, you add them on LinkedIn, you're following them. That's just another way to keep up with folks. And then also when we're applying to the new jobs, it's always good to try and add folks from that company to your LinkedIn. You can reach out and ask them questions once they accept you and be like, hey, like, what's it like working for your company? What's your tech stack? Like, I program in Python. What packages are you using? And then if they talk about a whole list of libraries that you've never heard of or never used, that's where we're going to implement those little micro projects. We're going to learn those. That way, if we get that opportunity to interview, you can talk semi-competently about what they're using on the job there, and you're going to check some of those boxes and just be a much stronger candidate for it. So that's great stuff there. And then tech in your current workspace. So just learning about the tech that you're using more currently at home, on the job. That's all great stuff there too, especially if you have like a profession that you've been in for a long time. No matter what it is, that's super important. I've seen folks that worked in the restaurant industry for years, and then they end up getting a job with like Clover Systems. It's like a big point of sale system. If you have, decades of experience in the restaurant industry, and then you learn how to code, your skills are invaluable for that company. You know how that industry works on the forefront. You've used the system. You've seen its shortcomings. So the perspectives that you can offer are so much greater than, the programmer with 30 years of experience that has never touched the system in the workplace and doesn't know the pitfalls or the shortcomings of why, entering one item, you got to go through 7 screens, how that's a problem. They're like, oh, that's great. It makes sense. You're breaking it up and splitting this up, and it's better for the database. You're like, well, it's not better for the end user. It takes them 20 minutes. So things like that. Folks in the healthcare industry, they've went on to work for, healthcare tech companies because they had that experience in the field. Again, knowing how the field works and then how that translates to the product and then being able to program around it. It's just super invaluable. And then you can always build projects from your workspace. So, say you are in the food industry, you can make your own little point of sale system. That even adds to applying to those jobs. You're utilizing your years of experience that's helping lift the burden off your shoulders as far as like, I got to think of, how to solve a problem. You've already known how to solve the problem and you know all the materials in it. So it makes that aspect of learning so much easier. And then we'll move on down to our bullet point of keeping motivated. So I don't know about you all, but when I was looking for a job, I applied to probably hundreds of jobs. Some days I was just going, spending 6 hours a day, just trying to do 20, 30 applications a day. That gets super exhausting. So there are some skills that we can use to make that better. We've talked about it in some of our workshops as far as like tailoring your resume. But if we're thinking a little bit more smartly and working a little smarter towards this, we can tailor our resume. We apply to that job. We utilize our network. If we know anybody that works at the company, maybe we can get a good word put in. We can utilize LinkedIn to make those resources. So you are putting in a bit more work to do this one application. However, you're utilizing much more. And then ideally, you're going to be tracking that like a spreadsheet. You can do some follow-ups and things like that. When I started seeing real success in getting interviews, I was applying to maybe 3 jobs a day at most and doing these things, reaching out, making connections. Then I was landing those interviews, and then some of them I was turning down because I didn't like the job or I didn't like the company. Some of them I was just not qualified for. My resume had some skills listed, but I wasn't a strong enough candidate in the spaces they were looking at. So things like that didn't work out. But the companies that I was interested in, I still followed up with them, 6 months down the road. Maybe I built some projects that utilized Postgres databases that they use. And, I built a API in Flask, something like that. That was something maybe that they had on their website that I didn't have a skill with. And like, hey, I know I wasn't a right fit then. I've been learning. Here's some items I've learned in your tech stack. So ideally, I can be a better fit in your organization if, the opportunity then arises. Hey, David, welcome back.
Yeah, I'm on my phone and don't have my meeting notes, so y'all have to bear with me. Sorry about that. Yeah, my internet's down at the moment, I think. So.
Yeah. Well, if you want to jump in, I've covered the projects and I've hit kind of on your points, but not as well as you. So.
Yeah, totally fair. Yeah. So I think one of the big things after you graduate is networking, honestly. The more you can network with real in-person developers, the better. Now, keep in mind, online meetings are also fine, but if you can do in-person ones, that is always valuable. That really stands out in an industry that's kind of characterized by a lot of online stuff. And so in-person is really unique. So absolutely prioritize that if you can. Biggest thing too is don't go to networking meetings like asking for a job or anything. Go because you're interested in the topic and because you're interested in the people. If you make really good connections with those people, opportunities and jobs will follow, right? So that's the important part. So that's really my really big piece of advice. The first thing. Next thing is really utilize LinkedIn, right? That kind of goes also into the networking thing. But if you meet somebody at a networking event, connect with them like as soon as possible. I don't know about you all, but I'm super bad for meeting somebody, like having a great connection and then walking away, doing something else, talking to somebody else and be like, I totally forgot that person's name and I have no idea who that was. And that really sucks very much. And that's bad. So actually I think my internet's back. I'm going to try and hop back on my computer. So I'll see y'all in a minute. Catch you on the flip side.